Topic: Part 8 of Unshaken, Real Stories Part 2 Inches with guest Kevin Anthony Johnson, Dr. Eubulus Timothy, and Steve Tulowitzki. Host of Journey to Self-Love Coach Chloe Timothy, Episode 53 and 54.
And the other thing that just popped up, which is very sweet, is Zoe, our seventh grader, just got her middle school yearbook today. And for the eighth graders, when you graduate middle school in the US, they had this whole section with all the kids' baby pictures. Just like they're in the little squares, but it's the baby pictures of the kids. And so we're sitting here saying, don't get stuck in your past. That's a recipe for disaster. And here's all this
fascinating
delight.
about what you just said is that Robert Plant told a story about where he drew inspiration for what he created. And so in that instance, he looks to the past, but not to dwell in it or stay there, but to create something
new
right now that evokes new meaning out of that past.
Back some of the incredible voices you heard throughout the series. Trusted coaches, leaders, amazing humans, my brother, and all of them I deeply admire and value them. You'll hear what these conversations did in them and some of the truths that unfolded in their lives, and my life too. But the most powerful breakthroughs, they don't always show up in perfect quotes or polished insights. They show up in lived moments. So, to Yubi, KJ, Steve, thank you for walking this journey with me, and thank you for closing it with your truth. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back, and we'll jump right in there.
And so I think how we go forward, but sometimes the past does hold us back, especially if there was, we talk about trauma and what happens and how we cannot get over it and how, and we keep going back like a bad algorithm, keep pulling you back. And we have the fear that settles in. And I think we spoke about the fear of fear. We forget the memory, but we remember the fear. And anything and everything is the trigger that takes you back to that fear. And so, but it's how we overcome and what should we do to overcome and how we use the past as the foundation to build the future in the present.
There's Hollywood love and more propaganda and what it's supposed to be and what it can't be. But I feel as you get some of these really basic aspects of life down into fundamentals, like that ratio, love is connection divided by separation. So where there's more connection, there's maybe separation. We need some of that. You're going to have conflict in a relationship, in a marriage. You think, is it going to break up? But if there's more separation, if there's more connection than separation, then it comes back and that separation fades. But we've learned from that, distance makes the heart grow fonder. You got enough separation, but it's at risk, and then the connection comes back. So I have 4 equations like that. I'd love to hear, what that, from all of you, what's stirred by that?
Okay, it looks like we're on the love trail now.
Where's your negativity bias now, huh? Too much connection.
Let's hear. I have an opinion, and love, the separation sometimes is good. Complete separation, like a separation for good, is sometimes good because there's also a thing called boundaries.
Yeah.
We can love, we can connect, we can do, it can be messy. But when love takes away who we are, that is not love.
No. That's separation from who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. We need it's like an ROI equation, right? The denominator is the investment and the top is the return. We need to separate from toxins. We need to see what the toxins are, separate those out so that we can connect with nutrients, nourishment.
Yeah. I'd add that a good friend of ours, Eubulus, you may have met him, I don't know, but Tony Schwartz has this idea called the Energy Project, and he's done this work for a couple of decades now. But in one of his presentations, he says this phrase that has always rung true for me, and that's that everything pulses. And I have taken that as almost like a little mantra for myself, that even in relationships, whether it's with my kids or my loved one or my significant other or friends, when I'm apart, that's for me to be in the world and growing. When we're together, that's when we're to share. And for everybody to acknowledge the difference in me or the non-difference in me, and for me to do the same for my colleagues or my friends or my loved ones. So it becomes this experience of we're both apart in the world, experiencing something, growing. We come back together, we share what we learned, and we grow together. But we also are introducing ourselves afresh. Because when we do this, we don't come back the same. Even if we didn't do much, we're out in the world, we're experiencing something, good or bad or indifferent, we come back together and we're different. It may not always equate to growth as we think about it, but difference. And to me, that's healthy. When we're together, and this is why I think in my own, I've done some reading on it, but also I think just anecdotally, the pandemic had its effect on couples severely because they were together almost all the time. And that cadence of going to the office or going to pick up the kids or going to sports events wasn't there. And so the tension of them being with each other and not growing became too much for their relationship, and it shattered it. Now they didn't have some people had great relationships through the pandemic, but they had great habits of separation and connection, more than likely. So that's how I'm feeling your theory.
You know
Yeah,
what?
I think so. I agree with you on that. And because I see, when you talk about the pandemic and those lockdowns, you know, there were marriages that were on the brink that managed to heal. And there were healthy marriages which fractured, or relationships during that time. So yes, you know, the importance of separation creates this ability of wanting, of missing, of being able to actually really understand one's true emotions of love. Do I really love this person, and do I really need this person, or I can actually manage without this person? And that's the danger of separation at times. Well, actually, not a danger, but you know, reality of separation. You know, we know that famous line, absence makes the heart grow fonder. But
out of sight, out of mind too.
Out of sight, out of mind. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's so the mind and the heart. They're different.
Yeah, again, the mind and the heart. And yeah, I think that equation of yours works. And we do know, again, from a neuro scientific point of view, how the brain works. The more you're in contact with, the more, I know there's that famous line that neurons that are that fire together are wired together, meaning that there's a stronger link, and that builds on. And of course, it is also the negative side to that as well. But we look at how it affects love, and you know, let's not break into song. You know, I know there's so many songs that we can go to, since we tend to be going towards music, which is important, you know, which again, and we go towards music because that's part of who we are as a species. You know, we have the ability to create music, and we are the only species that can do that. And we can write it down and record it and keep it for posterity so others can hear it. or share the world, and it stirs in us, when we listen to music that are inspiring or even uninspiring. But yes, the connections are important, and the separations, and there is that equilibrium that is required, and what is that sign that you use in the equation before you put an equals to? What is that factor, that keeps the separation and the the contact, in its perfect union.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if the next series is going to be about relationships.
Or music.
Or
I don't know about music, but I don't know about relationships.
Or food.
Talk about music. I just want you guys to know that on Sunday evening, I went to the final finale of Johnny Mathis. Wow is right. Wow is right. And talk about the past and how it shapes us. Every time I sit at the piano, and KJ, you're going to know this. You'll know this too. KJ, maybe you, because you listen, you had more contact with music. Every time I sit at the piano, I'm playing Misty. I've been playing. That was the first jazz piece I played. It's the song that got me into the jazz program in South Africa. I didn't know how to play jazz. I tried, I figured it out. I added a major seventh chord here and there just to make it sound good. Darius loved it. He said, okay, you're in the program. Because it's a go-to song, I don't play it. I force myself not to play it when I sit at the piano. Force myself. Just like, it's the only song that I can play without even thinking, and I never need music. I forgot about it. And he sang it. Look at me. Oh my God. I came back home. It was 11 p.m. at night. I sat at the piano and I played Misty. Talk about the good moments, the joys of the past that exist there, that we forget and we want to push it away because life gets in the way and the messiness gets in the way. Those moments of joy, Steve.
Well, I think that, music is pure. Maybe it's audible, but it's also, physical. You can feel the vibrations. It is pure connection. One chord of Dazed and Confused on the bass, from that movie last night about Led Zeppelin. It just it connects all of us instantly back with ourselves and with each other, and disconnects, separates. Maybe there are bad associations as well, but it's smell is like that. But I think music is, you can't smell over the radio. They're trying to do that, but there's something really really magic about it.
You think Chad can do that, Steve? Okay, so before we close out, I would love if there's any story in your life that has happened or that has emerged or evolved or reinvented something just from the things that you've shared. If you all can, I have something to share as well, so I would love for you all to just share. Just to inspire people to remain unshaken even when it's chaos, and that there's hope.
Well, you want to go, KJ? Oh, you're gonna slap me back with the
Go for it.
Pickleball paddle?
Yeah, okay, he's slapping you there, right?
We're talking about love and stories, and so the story that I can't there's no other story that comes to mind than the night that I met Celine, my wife. February 7th, 2004. I was in London with my sister because it's her birthday's February 6th. So she said, want to go to London? It's $300 on British Airways. And I said, sure, I'll book a lousy hotel and meet you there. And then my wife, her birthday is February 8th. She lived in Amsterdam, born and raised. Her best friend took her to London. It's like 45 minutes. I'm sure it was even cheaper than $300. And so the night before her birthday, about 11:30 p.m., after the pubs had closed, but when guests at the hotel had one more hour in the bar at that hotel, I was in line to get a beer, and Celine was standing there, and she raised a glass to me, and I sort of looked around and was like, surely that's not me, but I raised the glass back. I went back to deliver the Guinness to my sister that she'd ordered, and I came back around, to talk to Celine, and there was this whole group of people around there, but our eyes met, and she sort of, split the sea of people that were talking with them, and we connected and started having a conversation. We stayed up until about 5:30 in the morning. There was Norma and Jenna on their 5th wedding anniversary. They were from Boston. They have tiki torches in their yard, and they throw parties. They had stupid human tricks. Jenna could rest a wine glass on her foot, like put her foot up like this and rest a wine glass. Norman could pick up a quarter with no hands and drop it into a pint glass, amongst other things. There was Tassos Papakostas, this older Greek businessman who happened to be there as well. Shared stories. He was mostly watching. There were 2 Canadians who disappeared and went off into the night and came back a few hours later. One of them earned the nickname Kotsbaard. So I don't know in Afrikaans if you could understand Kotsbaard, but it's Dutch for puke beard for obvious reasons. There was Barry, who was Irish, and nobody could understand a word that Barry was saying. But somehow in the night, he disappeared, turned into a snake, went under a fence, and came back from the bar with some kind of bottle of liquor that he drank. And then Saskia is Celine's best friend, and my sister. We just hung out in the lobby, and magic happened that night. Connection happened. I got home a few days later. I sent her an email with some pictures I had on the digital camera. She wrote me an email back and says, I was interested in you. I've never been to the United States. And 9 days later, she came, or about 6 weeks later, she came, first trip to the US. Our first date was 9 days long. We went to Las Vegas. I went to work and I said, I guess I'm taking the next week off, or you're going to have to let me go because this is what's happening in my life. So there's like this power of something that's unshakable, completely unexpected. I went for a long weekend to take my sister to Waxy's Little Sister and some of my favorite places in London. And we just passed the 20, let me do the math right, 21st year of our meeting. So that's what comes up for me. Unshaken, unstirred. Well, not unstirred for sure. We've been stirred, but we remain unshaken.
Thank you for sharing that. That is your unshaken. You just replayed the movie. And you accessed your moments of joy. That's your unshaken movie. Thank you for sharing.
Well, if you're going to talk about movies, so today, which is the 20th, it's here. I'm in South Africa, so it's Friday the 23rd, and you guys are still there in the past.
Okay.
So 22 years ago today, I was at the Cannes Film Festival. The festival is on at the moment, and with my movie Othello, Shakespeare's Othello. It is a South African version of the famous work by Shakespeare, and it was 50 years since Orson Welles was there with his Othello. So it's like 73 years ago that he was there. And I decided to go on to my first movie ever and to make it, and everybody says, no, it's impossible. Who are you? Where did you come from? You have no knowledge of film. How can you do something like this? And of course, Chloe will tell you that, don't tell me I can't do it. So, and I, it's so much so that I get a call one day, and I remember sitting in my house and I pick up the phone, and it is Lou Gossett Jr. And he said, listen, I heard you doing this movie, Othello, and I want to play the lead. I said, oh, wow, I would love you to play the lead, but we got no money, and we're doing it on a shoestring budget. And so I had to go and go to all the production companies that make commercials and get the short ends of the movie film that they haven't used. And that's how we made this movie. And my lead actor was Selma Kakanube, went on, after he shot the movie, he got to play Othello at the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon. And from there, he got picked as Mufasa for the West End, and then he ended up on Broadway playing Mufasa in The Lion King. So, he moved on, and then the guy who played Iago ended up in Law and Order and Lost and all sorts of other shows after that. But I remember sitting on the beach on the day, 23 years ago, about to go see the film. And then this woman comes over me and she stands and says, are you Eubulus? And I said, yes. She said, oh, Diana was one of my actresses. Said I must come and say hello to you. And I look up, it is the famous Aishwarya Rai, the Indian superstar. And she said, oh, can I sit down? So she sits down and starts talking to me. And then 2 minutes later, Shah Rukh Khan comes and he sits down, and we're having this conversation. And then my friend Sean Woodley, he comes and sits and the four of us are having this surreal conversation, in a place that is surreal anyway, which is the Cannes Film Festival. And what it did show me was that anything is possible, as the song says, if you truly believe, and you can do things that make you walk on water, because everyone says, who are you? Why can you do it? You're not the right color. You're not the right person. You're not from the right place. You have no knowledge of film, and so I truly believe that. And if anyone's watching out there, if you believe in something in your heart and you really want to do it. And you know what? If you fail, so what? It's okay. You tried. And the worst is to be a bitter old person sitting there and said, if only, if only, if only. So.
Wow. There's two powerful stories, unshaken and stirred. Anything is possible. KJ, bring it.
Well, yeah. The story is actually 3 stories rolled up into one, and these are some things I want to just kind of lead in with the idea that shaking and being shaken isn't always, I mean, it could be perceived as a negative, as a destructive thing, but I've come to see shaking moments in my life as shaking my architecture, shaking my identity, so that things that don't belong there don't stay. And those things that are not fundamental or foundational to my identity are shaken away. So the 3 things that happened to me over the past 10 years are 2015, I found out who my birth mother was. I've been adopted since birth, and I was adopted at age 2 by my adoptive parents. But there was no access to this data until 2015, who my mother was. I found out who she was in 2015. 2018, I find out through 23andMe who my father is, and I get to know that side of the family. And so these 2 moments were fundamental shakings of my story, who I was, who I thought I was. And I had a choice in that moment to decide to stay with that old story or to explore the new one. because there are now 10 new siblings. 10 had passed away in the time of my life, and both of the parents had passed away. But I had 10 siblings that could tell me a new story about where I fit into their story. And I could assimilate that into me, or I could just keep on moving. And I chose, and I think it's become kind of an artifact of my own inner culture. I chose to embrace the new emerging of who I was. And I think there's a level of, I think, spiritual intimacy that I formed because I had to figure out who was I, even without the story of my adoption, which had been everything that I knew about up until age 45. And if I could let go of the story of who I was as an adopted kid and figure out who I was as a part of this new family, I had no idea what was on the other side of that. And add the complexity that I have a younger brother who I grew up with in my adopted family. And I have cousins and aunts and uncles from the family that I grew up in that I don't necessarily want to abandon, but I want to bring them in on my story. And so this whole idea of what do I cling to? What do I let go of? How do I allow myself to change and still stay my essence, as we talked about earlier in our conversation? And so I think these events, along with an ayahuasca experience in 2021 during the pandemic, began to unravel this illusion that my personality, my identity was fixed in some way. And we believe in transformation, but this is where the rubber meets the road, right? So it's easy to look at someone else and say, oh, I can see you making a big change in your life. It's another thing to be shaken on your own identity and have to figure out, what is the transformation I want to embrace or avoid or hide from? And this last 10 years has been this constant navigation of, how much control do I have? How much control do I want? How much risk do I want to engage in? How much fun do I want to have? How much am I afraid in these moments? And some folks will look at my life and tell me I live a risky life. My brother even told me that I live an itinerant life, like a nomad, which was kind of funny to me. But also, some people have accused me of going off script, to which I happily agree with, because who the hell wrote the script for me? And I think the story of this and the way I wind it up is that when something gets shaken, I get to say what I keep, and I get to say what's mine. And I get to throw away what I want to throw away and never look back on. And to me, that's agency. That's my autonomy. That's my sovereignty as a man, as a human. And if you're being shaken, realize you have choices. You have choices about how you deal with how you're being shaken. You have choices about what you want to keep and what you want to toss away, what you want to integrate and what you want to eliminate in whatever way that happens. And to me, that's the truth that I'm sitting with. You know, shaking doesn't mean something's happening that's wrong. It just means something's being revealed. And I get to do what I want to with that revelation.
So, is your movie called Shaken?
Movie, Chloe?
Not stirred.
And not stirred? Shaken and stirred? Or shaken and the revelation in being shaken? The revelation.
Shaken and bacon.
Shaken and bacon.
Shaken and bacon. Okay, shaken and bacon.
We're shaking and baking. We're cooking something out of this.
Yeah, there's a meal here. It's all about metabolism. It's a meal. It's coming back to that. Okay.
Just coming back to metabolism.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Come back to metabolism. Okay. We are at the top of the hour here, and I want to take 2 minutes to share a quick story. And all of you know that I've been in this relationship for 6.5 years. Right. I was asked to speak to a woman at a women's conference, a huge women's conference, and a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, and I spoke on a model that I created called the Crown Model. If you know the model. One of the things about the Crown Model, I spoke to all these women. One of the things was, how do you speak up? How do you speak your truth and not be afraid? What makes us stay in a relationship, even if it's not serving us? Is it fear? Is it fear of loss? I spoke that. And I even said to the woman, I said, I'm not saying go and divorce your husband. I'm not saying break up with, I'm saying be courageous enough to speak up. Because one of the things that I didn't do in my marriage, and I was with him for 29 years, I wondered if I did speak up and push back, what would have changed? I wonder, but I didn't because I had fear. So, 6.5 year relationship. There was some elements of the old relationship in it. So then I came home that night. On the Sunday night, I was with my sister. Maybe knows the story. I was with my sister, came home, and there was a conversation. And I said to my sister, I'm saying this. She said, but you can't. I said, no, I told an auditorium full of women, speak up. Tell the truth. I have to speak my truth, even if if things at risk. And I did that. All hell broke loose. But today, my heart is at peace because I feel good that I finally spoke my truth without fear, fearlessly. I was shaken, but I'm unshaken. The core of me will never be shaken. I am Chloe. That's who I am. That's who I am. Everything else is shaken. Chloe stays. I am Chloe. So that's my story. Now, what do I call myself? I can't say shaken and bacon, but I'm going to say shaken and unshaken. So thank you, all of you. Thank you so much for your stories, for sharing your heart, for being so open, vulnerable, real. And I'm sure all your stories, all these stories here are resonating with someone. So thank you again for the time and for being on the show. Well, you're going to come back. I think the next series is going to be on relationships. I have a feeling. But let's see. It's the journey of self-love in relationships. So, okay, so everybody out there, what you just heard wasn't a conversation. It was really a mirror of what it means to stay soft in the chaos, to be shaken in the chaos, to choose self-honesty over self-protection, to be honest with ourselves, to walk forward unafraid but not unwilling to go back to those moments of joy, like we talked about, to find those moments of joy. And if there's anything I hope you carry from this series, it's this here. You don't have to hold it all together to be strong. You don't have to be fearless to move forward. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of your own king. The world is going to shake. Things around you will shake. Things in your life will definitely shake. But you can stay anchored in what's real. you can come home to who you truly, truly are. The one thing that is unshaken, what is true, that's you. So here's a final thought hack in the series. Even in the shake, I don't disappear. I return to myself. Let that be your practice. Let that be your promise. And above all, let it be your truth to stay and remain unshaken, even when everything inside and around you